Hello? What's the future of phones, you ask? Well, let me tell you, my friend, it's foldables.
Foldables are a relatively new form of smartphone. They really only started about a year or two ago, with the first mainstream device being the Samsung Galaxy Fold, which originally had issues of its own. It could get little bits of sand under the plastic screen. When you fold it, there's a visible crease down the middle, and because you can't just fold glass, it uses a plastic display. Now there have been second generations of that original Fold and other variations of foldables, but there really haven't been all that many concerning the amount of smartphone manufacturers out there. So after that Galaxy Fold came out last year, Huawei had their Huawei Mate X, which had a bigger display than the Folds because it folded the other direction. So it had a front display which could fold out into another one. The Galaxy Fold is pretty much a tablet that you can fold up into relatively the size of a regular smartphone. It's a little taller, but you should be able to fit it in your pocket, unlike a tablet. That's the whole design of it. So then Samsung's second attempt at a foldable was the Samsung Galaxy Z Flip. And this was a different form factor. It's more like a flip phone. So instead of having a tablet that folds in, it's more of a current day size smartphone that flips up and flips down. So you can fit it in your pocket much easier. It's just like a little brick, which reminds me exactly of this device right here. Now, this is an interesting device to bring up, considering that the 3DS was just continued this past week for production. This obviously was a very popular and very successful device, even though the technology here was different than what you might normally find. So instead of just being a brick that was just a flat thing, this had dual screens. Now, it's not a folding screen, but I would consider it a foldable because it folds up, kind of like the new Microsoft Surface Duo. Now, the reason why this was so successful is because it honed in on the main points that you need to think about when having a foldable phone. So with Samsung's Galaxy Z Flip, they introduced a few new technologies. So they introduced ultra thin glass, which there is a layer of ultra thin glass, but it's under a layer of a plastic display so that the glass doesn't break, doesn't shatter, that kind of stuff. So it's basically like a plastic screen, but it is certainly more durable than it was before. However, there's still a visible crease in the line when you fold it down, just like the Galaxy Fold beforehand, and it can get scratched easily because it's not glass on the top layer. Now, Samsung has brought out their Galaxy Fold 2, which is a sequel to the original Galaxy Fold, which is just a tablet form factor. You can fold it up, but lots of improvements were made. It has that ultra thin glass under the plastic display, so it still can get scratched and it still has that visible crease, but it's better than the original Fold. That display now has 120 hertz on it, the inside display, and then the outside display is much better, so you can view whatever you need to do, text messages or whatever, much easier than you could on the original Fold or the Z Flip. And then, of course, there's the Motorola Razr, which is pretty much the only other smartphone. There's the Motorola Razr from last year, 2019, and the new Motorola Razr 5G from 2020, which has improved on a lot of what made the 2019 bad and good. Like, it's improved upon pretty much everything. The main thing with that is that there isn't a huge visible crease, but it's more evened out throughout the display because it folds in. But that's a similar form factor to the Galaxy Z Flip. It's a flip phone instead of being a tablet that can become a phone. Now, what makes foldables so interesting is that they are a different form factor from what we had from smartphones before. So smartphones now, they're just one solid screen pretty much that just keeps getting bigger and bigger and bigger. Now with foldables, they can solve that problem. You can have these big displays, but you can fold them up, put in your pocket easily, and then go on. But there are certainly some things that foldables need to get right to be able to make it into the mainstream. As of now, normal people aren't and shouldn't go out and buy foldable phones just because they are so much of a first generation technology, even though we're kind of on the second gen now. But they are more of just a tech enthusiast kind of a thing. It's not someone you would see, it's not something that you would see, your neighbor using just as their primary phone. And that's because of a few different factors. The 4 things that need to be improved upon in order to get foldables into the mainstream is battery life, cost, durability, and software. So just starting with battery life, that's probably the most obvious. It's hard to fit a big battery in something that needs to fold because you can't put a battery in that hinge part, so there's less room to put one. So what manufacturers have done is they put part of the battery in the lower half of the phone and part in the upper phone, or left and right, depending upon what kind of foldable you're making. And so we either need to make battery advances where we can make bigger batteries that are obviously smaller, like that have more capacity to them, or we need to make foldables make better use of their space, so moving things around so that you can fit a bigger battery in there, or even making them a little thicker if they need to be a little thicker. Because battery life on foldables hasn't been as terrible as you might think it would be, but it certainly hasn't been great. Specifically, the original Motorola Razr had okay battery life, but certainly not great. The Galaxy Z Flip is better, but it's certainly not quite up to the battery life of, say, the S20 Ultra or the Note 20 Ultra, or phones with big batteries, like even the Asus Zenfone 6, like that has a big battery and it lasts for a long time. So battery life is obviously a must. You can't have the phone running out halfway through the day. But you also have to have those features that flagship phones have. Otherwise, why would you choose a foldable over a flagship? Features, battery-wise, like wireless charging, even reverse wireless charging, and fast charging. So fast charging being like at least above 15 watts. I'm just going to move on to durability because that is also obviously a part that needs to improve with foldables. Now again, they haven't been terrible this second generation, but looking at regular phones, they certainly need to get more durable. And not in the sense that, let's just replace the back glass with plastic or something like that, or metal, like they used to be. Not that, like if you shatter kind of a thing, but just more reliable durability wise. Now most foldables come with like a one-time screen replacement. I know the Galaxy Z Flip has that, so in case something happens to the display, you have a year out from when you bought it that you can go and get a one-time replacement, which is nice when you're spending so much on it, which I'll get into the cost a bit later. But it needs to certainly be improved. I'm hoping that Samsung will work on this ultra thin glass technology and have a second generation out by next year, hopefully for the Z Flip 2, which will probably come out around February or March when the S21 or S30 or whatever the next flagship Samsung Galaxy line is going to be. So just durability wise, obviously hinges are getting better so that you won't get dust or sand or anything in those. And the displays, again, we need to be able to make glass that can fold easily so that you don't have to put this plastic layer on top or screen protectors, because Plastic scratches really easily, but it doesn't shatter, so that's one good thing about it. But it's certainly nowhere near where smartphones have come now. So durability is certainly a must for gaining the trust of consumers. Moving on to software. Now, software, it's kind of a subjective thing. Some people really like certain aspects of software, and while others don't like that certain thing. Just look at like iPhone versus Android, right? There's some people who absolutely love iOS, and there are some people who absolutely hate iOS, and they're like, "I would never buy an iPhone. I'm only using an Android phone," which is fine. But then there are also those Android people who are like, "Oh, I'll never use Samsung One UI. Oh, it's got to be the Pixel experience. Oh, I'll never use um, the Pixel experience because I like Oxygen OS," kind of a thing. It really depends on the person. I'm not talking about that kind of software. Um, Motorola has some great little software features in their Motorola Razr. So does Samsung. But what software needs to do is it needs to differentiate itself with these foldables from regular smartphones. So take Samsung for example with the Galaxy Z Flip. They have a mode where you can flip it in half, so it makes kind of like an L shape, and so then the top part is doing something different from the bottom part. But this only supports like 3 apps at the time this video is coming out, which is like the camera. You can have the whole part be camera, and then the rest is just like the shutter button. Then YouTube, like you can watch a video and look at the comments down below, and then like maybe notes or something like that. But that's about it. So software is a little weird. First off, there needs to be some support for developers to be able to get foldables to start becoming mainstream. Developers need to make their apps work for a wide variety of devices. So when you look at the Galaxy Fold 2, I'm going to this now. If you look at some reviews of that, people are like, yeah, it's great to have the display if it works well in the apps. But a lot of the apps just do not work well with these dual displays because it's trying to think of it as a tablet, but the aspect ratio is all different. So then some apps have a little thing on the side and then content on the right, while other apps just have a big blown up version of what it was before. It's kind of a mess. It's kind of hit or miss with apps. So what needs to happen is that there needs to be kind of a uniform app development where app developers can say, okay, this is what happens when you use this app on a foldable. So on the left hand of the display is where all the menus are, and then on the right hand is where you view all your content. Some apps obviously again work better than others, and then you have to get these unique features rolling. If you're gonna introduce unique features like flex mode or whatever, you have to actually use them in more than like 2 apps. Otherwise, developers are gonna be like, okay, well they're just gonna kill that off later. Motorola does some really nice things with their software on the front display. Just like how they have their always on display or ambient display or moto display on their phones, it has the same thing on the Razr, but even more evolved, which is great because you want to use that display just to check your notifications and then flip it on open and actually use your phone to respond or view whatever that message was. And then finally, arguably the biggest factor in getting foldables to become mainstream is the cost. So as of now, there has been no foldable that has retailed below the $1,000 mark. As of now, the Galaxy Fold 2 or Galaxy Z Fold 2, whatever they want to call it, is $2,000. The Galaxy Z Flip is, depending upon where you buy, it's around $1,300. Same with the Razr, it's right around that zone, like $1,300. That's a lot to pay for a smartphone. And even though prices for smartphones have been creeping up with flagships, like originally the iPhone 10 was like $1,000, and people are freaking out about that. Now it's kind of more common to see a phone that's that much. When you're paying that much money, though, you're expecting perfection, and when you're buying foldables that cost that much, you're not getting perfection. Say you want to get the best phone out there, so you go out and get the Samsung Galaxy Note 20 Ultra. Now that's like, again, $1,300, And you are pretty much getting perfection there. You get pretty much a perfect display, an OLED, 120 hertz, big display with a small punch hole. You get the best specs, the Snapdragon 865. You get tons of RAM, you get tons of storage, and everything just works really fluently. But then when you go to a foldable device that's priced even more than that, the same or even more than that, you're getting, like, say, the Z Fold. The Z Flip, sorry. You're getting a 60 hertz display. Some things kind of don't really work in the software. You're only getting the 2 cameras that are decent but not quite as good as the other ones. So it just looks like, what are you spending your money on here? You're spending it on a crease in the display. The cost needs to come down to have people warrant buying a foldable device. There are obviously people out there who are like, yeah, you know what? For $1,300, I'll absolutely buy a foldable phone over a nearly perfect regular phone because it's the future. But most people would just say, I can go out and buy a Pixel 4a for $350, and it's all I need. It's pretty much a perfect smartphone for me, which I can absolutely see, and I agree with. But you also have to have evolution. You can't keep doing the same thing. But if manufacturers can get foldables below that $1,000 mark, say that someone, OnePlus or Google or someone like that, makes a foldable phone, maybe it's a little smaller or something, but it's like $800, people would rush out to buy that thing. Like, yeah, if OnePlus or Google or LG made a foldable phone that was like $800, that had pretty much everything that the foldables from today have for that price, that would really get people to move on to the foldable train, from the regular smartphones. Ultimately, I do believe that foldables are the future. It's just it's hard to get there, especially now that there's a whole pandemic and the economy of the world is just almost in ruins. People are just not willing to spend a ton of money for something that kind of doesn't work at the moment. But I still do believe that this is the way that smartphones need to go, the way they need to evolve. They're kind of becoming like a half computer, half smartphone thing that you can put in your pocket. It's great. I'm hoping that my next smartphone is going to be a foldable. I'm really eyeing that, the Galaxy Z Flip 2. I really want to see what they're going to do with that. If they make that with 120 hertz display, a bigger outside panel, and they can just keep the same cameras if they want, at least 2, like an ultra wide and a regular camera, I would be sold. I would love to get one of those. Just because it is so cool. Sure, I could get something for much cheaper that does just the same tasks that I would do on that, but it's just awesome. There are new ways that you can get productive with these foldable devices. You can have multitasking apps, back and forth. You can be viewing a YouTube stream on the side while you're at your Zoom meeting on the other one, and you just have your mic off. There you go. Let me know what you think, if foldables are the future. I certainly believe that they will be. It's just to the point of getting there. The second generation is really when things start to improve for foldables, and we're starting to see that with the Samsung Galaxy Fold 2. Hopefully more manufacturers will start producing foldable phones, because as of now, there's a report that said Samsung has 80% of the foldable market right now, which makes sense because really the only competition it has is Motorola with their Razr. Pretty much everyone else has failed, unless you're looking at, like, not the foldable screen kind, like LG has their dual display thing, Microsoft has their Surface Duo, but that's just dual screen, like over here, like this thing that has been done, but in a different way. Thank you all so much for tuning in to Tea Time.